I just would like to briefly talk about how the first winner, the first black winner of Big Brother will be the worst winner in Big Brother history. Next to Big Brother 13, Rachel. And the reason why I say Big Brother 13, Rachel is because much like this season of Big Brother season 23, Big Brother 13 was pretty much a season made for one of the returnees to win. They put at least like half the house of returnees in that season, and then they had a bunch of janky twists, especially towards the end, which pretty much guaranteed one of the returning players were going to win. And plus, they placed them in a house full of idiots and bad players. I mean, probably the worst alliance in Big Brother history was in that season with the regulators. But much like that season, but much, much worse, Big Brother 23 was made for one of the six to win. Well, first of all, they put the six of them in there. They put them in there in this media climate where they're pushing all of this race play and racial politics bullshit. And you could tell from the jump, production was all the way in with casting for quote unquote diversity. Thus, you knew that they wanted a diverse winner to win this season. But on top of casting the six, look at who else they cast. I mean, they essentially cast a bunch of characters who were going to target, for lack of a better term, all of the white guys in the house or any person that wasn't classified as disenfranchised or a minority. I mean, even the white chicks that they cast this season, they cast white chicks that hate their own fathers and brothers, meaning they hate white men. Chicks like Claire who came in the house professing how she was all girl power and was going to play that role. You had Sarah Beth, you had Brittany. Anybody who probably would have bucked the system pretty much got evicted pre-jury outside of Frenchie, who made it clear he was a proud NAACP member and was all about, sacrificing his game, to help the lowly colored folk who needed a win. But people like Travis, people like Brent, people like Whitney, they didn't have a shot in hell. And so, in this season, which was literally a handicap season for someone to win, and then you had production enabling it all, that all just makes this into one big short bus handicap season to allow one of these people to win just so they can say history was made during this season of Big Brother. History was made in the time of BLM and George Floyd and all this other racial bullshit that all of these networks have been encouraging and pushing throughout. I mean, I know if you're watching Survivor, you've been made aware of the diversity casting, and now come on in, guys, will no longer be said. I know if you've been keen on the news, the Activist show, where they recently had to modify due to the backlash, but the Activist show, just showcasing that CBS purposely designed these seasons to push social political agenda. And so when you have a season gift wrap for you, when you get to play essentially with a handicap, how when golfers play people who can't really play, they give them a high handicap. And so this was a high handicap season. And the only way you could truly say these three, because one of them are going to win, Xavier, Derek F., or Isa, the only way you could say if these three are actually good players, they would have to come back in a season of all winners. They would have to come back in a season of all winners and see how they play in that kind of season. And for me personally, they wouldn't even have to win. If they could get a high placement once again, like if they could reach the final 6 once again, then their gameplay would be a little bit more, would be more validated than it is currently. Or they can return in a season full of newbies, but set in another team's twist. Because they've done these team twist seasons before. So have Xavier, Derek F, or Ozza come back for another season, team twist with all newbies, and see if they can get a high placement once again. Because as it's been stated many times before, this wasn't a real season. The players in the house have said this themselves, that this wasn't a real season, that they weren't playing a real game. And clearly, judging by that jury segment, it's full of people who were willing to be the sacrificial lambs, to be victims of this race play season, to cater to the agenda. So the people in the jury have proven that they have no issue with this bullshit. Now, I'm sure they were put up to it, but, I was looking for someone to show on their face, no, I'm not really down for this shit. And I just believe they cast this season for this bullshit. And it's pretty goddamn obvious. Which, again, spits in the face of this whole narrative of this being a diverse season. Because they're judging the diversity based on the superficial. But even if you were to judge the diversity based on the superficial, they still didn't cast for diversity. Because according to them, the only groups of people that exist in America are either so-called white or so-called black. They didn't accommodate all the other races and ethnicities that haven't even been in the house before. It was just a black versus white season with a Asian man here and a half Hispanic girl there. Race war season, much like how they did before with Survivor back in 2006 during the Cook Island season. But yeah, this is a handicap season, and the only worse winner than the winner of this season is Rachel. And I know a lot of people like Rachel, but you can't deny that season was made for one of the returnees to win, and Rachel just so happened to be the returnee that won that season. So if I had to rank the season winners, and just starting with the worst, it'd be Rachel, and then one of Xavier, Derek F, or Ozza. Because if you look at all the other previous winners, none of them had a season made for them to win. I mean, you even had previous returnee seasons like season 14, season 18, and I'm sure there's others, but those weren't even made for them. If anything, season 14 was made for a newbie to win because they cast people who would be bitter. And clearly they were bitter that season. And Dan earned that. If it would have been a win, he would have earned that win because he was set to be eliminated early when they had the chance. When Jody got dismissed, the first night, and then that Playboy bunny chick got evicted. Danielle was on the block next to JoJo, I believe. So he could have been out with her, but he was able to maneuver and coach his player to maneuver, kept her in the game. So that wasn't a catered season. And none of the other winners outside of Rachel and the winner of this season has had a season so catered to them. And the reason why this season is worse than 13 is because they essentially cast an entire cast along with production to push this bullshit agenda of having the first so-called black winner. And so, the only benefit, again, it's not some cause, it's not some history. The only benefit that will come from this season is that one person will have $750K to help make their lives a little bit better, a little bit more comfortable. But that's it. As far as gameplay and strategy and being able to rank themselves as quality players, they won't be able to brag about that shit. Because the easy reply is, well, can you do it without 5 guaranteed allies? Essentially. Because they all felt obligated to participate in this bullshit because this is what production expected of them. They expected them, they prompted them to align with each other based on race so they could have this first, so they could have this first thing, because people like to celebrate first of things, even though it's insignificant. So looking forward to seeing who can win this part 2. My money still is on Ozza winning, and it'll be very interesting if Ozza wins, who she will take to final 2 if she's able to win part 3. Because, as I stated in a previous video, this season deserves an Ozza and Derek F final 2. 2 people who essentially laid on their back, laid on their side for over 90% of the season. It will be very fitting. And then Queen Tiffany can win AFP because they awarded Devon for calling David coon, so why wouldn't they reward Tiffany for her fake gameplay? She can take the money back to Whitey number 1 and Whitey number 2.